I'm sure you all have seen the casualty rates the Confederation has endured in every confrontation with the Xylax. The numbers haunt me still. Entire army groups were gone in a matter of scant hours, overwhelmed and torn apart. Armor divisions disintegrated by bio-titan weaponry. Our garrisons ground to bloody chunks by relentless advances of their warrior forms, and our fleets gutted and torn to scrap metal on the orbit of every world we defended by fleets that darkened the stars and clogged the sky. The Xylax do not bargain, and do not engage in diplomacy other than the absolute surrender of the invaded species. They harvest the biological material of the living to create more of their own. They are monstrous and engage in any type of warfare that might provide a tactical advantage. They feel no fear, but they understand it well enough to abuse psychotropic gas, terror tactics, and the targeting of civilians and the wounded for maximum psychological effect. When we were told a new race, humanity, would join the fray, we were all less than enthusiastic. What was one young race more to throw to the meat grinder of war? A few more ships to buy ourselves some extra minutes for the evacuation of civilians and wounded. Barrack talk is corrosive when morale is low. We began to wager on how long would mankind stand and fight before running scared back to their home system and awaiting extermination. How many hundreds of thousands they would waste in this hopeless war. The bets were as depressing as our chances of making it to the next day. The Xylax threw their first ground assault over Copernicus, and the 17th Army Group was ordered to win time, to delay them by any means necessary. We had been given human reinforcements, who called themselves the Fifth Order, whatever that meant. Apparently, they had a seasoned commander from the last interhuman war of unification. We couldn't care less. Well, I am sure the Xylax cared even less. At first, that is. If any of you has been lucky to never see those thrice-cursed bastards go to war, I bless your minds, my kinsmen. The Xylax are unnatural. While our current investigations point to them being a heavily genetically modified race from before the foundation of the Confederation, we didn't know, nor care, of their origins that day. They swarmed with their infantry, fear-inducing bioforms of flesh and bone created from every biological form they killed, captured, and harvested, with graft weapons and enhanced and modified for war. Behind them came their spider tanks and heavy, super-heavy armor that crushed the ground on grav engines. Their lightest armor dwarfed our heaviest. Their bio-titans could take battalions by themselves, and their ships would lay brutal orbital fire, uncaring of friendly fire or civilian casualties. To them, we were more flesh to harvest for them to create new warrior forms for war. And so they came, firing corrosive bolts of acid that ate tanks and bunkers, beams of catalytic energy to melt and bubble flesh and bone. And then, they came with sharp and blunt appendixes, made from bio-enhanced bone, like saws, blades, spikes, and mauls, to butcher, kill, harvest, and feed. I swear to you, we did try. With our heaviest armor anchored behind defensive positions and plasma shields, with artillery enough to level mountains and war striders that dwarfed the buildings of the cities we defended, we fought with all we had. 100 species ready for war, plasma and laser weapons at the ready, servo armor clean and prepared, trenches dug and men on their stations. We engaged them at 07:12 local hour. Our lines began to break at 08:23 local hour. The perimeter was broken at 09:01 local hour, 10 minutes longer than the most generous predictions gave us. I broke protocol and chain of command to beg the humans to send anything they had to the spaceport to protect as many civilians as they could at 09:02. I am sure you all have read the transcript of my court-martial. Yes, I did shoot my superior officer because he refused to swallow his pride and ask for help. Yes, I regret nothing. The humans responded at 09:03 with one single communication on an open channel. Have any of you ever seen an actual meteor shower? A real one, not the holofictions? Then you have seen what I saw. Hundreds of points of flame and light descending from the heavens like fine rain, like legends, form a doomed era. I remember thinking how few they were, and how little strength they had to offer. And yet, I was amazed. They had thrown themselves into the fires of the nine hells willing and able, and their descent brought some fire into my men, who dug down and refused to give another inch until the humans arrived. They came to die with us. The least decency we could offer them was to stay alive until they got there. I managed to get lines reformed and contain the Zilad in a dozen breaches along the entire perimeters when the human commander requested coordinates for what he called nightfall. I did not know what that was, but I gave him the breaches. Understood, he said, laughing, I suppose at the sheer suicidal wish he had to have. Brace for impact and clear splash area. Tyrannies are inbound. I remember seeing the Zylax spider tank crawling over the wall at Breach 6, covered in warrior forms and weaponry, its thick arachnid legs bringing it over the wall, spewing fire and death. I fired my pistol, because what else could I do? There were Helixians and Tanithians at my side, firing all they had upon the thick hide of the beast. We weren't even denting it, but we had run of proper anti-armor 10 minutes earlier. The previous tank that had breached the perimeter was dead on the other side of the wall thanks to some madly brave private that had ran and jumped on it before detonating 2 full belts of grenades. We didn't have more madly brave privates, and even if we did not have any more grenades of that yield. The tank fired its main plasma accelerator at a squad at my left and turned them into half-melted bodies before training it back on us. I remember wondering what death would feel like, and if there really was something after death. And they landed right on the tank. The shockwave was brutal, sending me to the floor, and the warrior form on the tank flying. The tank buckled and fell down, its armor cracked and shattered, fluids and blood oozing from the impact zones. A strange and eerie silence filled the breach for a moment, as I managed to get up and look at what had happened. A lucky orbital round from our fleet, an unlucky shoot from theirs, space debris. My answer came from the smoke. Only 5. They felt like an army. Covered head to toe in sleek black armor that made them taller than any Felixian or Oriparo, they looked like mythical depictions of gods. The black armor was adorned by marks and sigils I did not understand at the time, and some I still do not. But there was one I could comprehend, the mark of leadership. The first of the figures wore some kind of holographic armor over its power plate, a bright orange flying, quadruped reptilian with open wings, a storm raging behind it. Its helmet mirrored that, taking on the shape of the head of said reptile. The visor lenses shone under the snout of the beast, its ears flourishing into wings of office that adorned the helmet. Its cape flew to the wind almost lazily in deep orange. Yes, it had a cape. An actual cape on a battlefield. I also remember thinking it seemed so stupid when the battle was over. But at the moment, it gave them the semblance of mythical might, of having exited some fairy tale for children where they would slay every monster from beyond the stars, and decided that the Zylax were worthy enough of their wrath to come out of those same fairy tales. And the damnest thing, it wasn't the cape, the decorated armor, or how they had reached us. It was their weapons. They had shoulder-mounted ordnance and weapons slung on their lower back. But their hands held no rifle or long gun, but blades, hammers, and daggers. The leader, the reptile-decorated warrior, had 2 long blades, one in each hand. Another of his companions, with a roaring golden feline on its chest and the same storm behind it, carried what seemed like a breaching axe our firefighters use to enter buildings. Just alien in look, and much more deadly in aspect. The third, a giant of a creature among its peers that towered over its fellow, had a brutal 2-handed hammer whose head reassembled some type of canid. On his chest was the same canid, standing howling on some massive pillar. The storm, too, raged behind it. The fourth was in comparison a lot shorter and was crouching over a warrior form, poking it with one of its many and varied types of knives. The armor in this one was decorated with bones and feathers of some kind, making it look like the devil of some primitive story. It wasn't as if the others weren't intimidating, but this one seemed made for it. It had a collar of teeth around its neck, and it seemed to be trying to cut pieces of the dead warrior form until it realized they were still living ones around. The last one was also smaller, but taller than the last one. The armor showed a blue tree of some kin, standing proud among a storm, and on its hands was, to my relief at the time, an actual weapon, long-barreled and scoped. For a few moments no one moved, then the reptile warrior spoke on open channel and speakers. It took me one insane second to realize it was making the offer to the Xylax. One insane moment of asking me how would be so stupid to make such an offer to a species hell-bent on the extermination and incorporation of every biological life form there was. It was then the true carnage began. After what felt like an hour of constant fire, but were mere seconds, the Xylus stopped and surveyed what was left of the 5 humans. Among the smoke, the same voice spoke up. "We will take that as a polite thank you, but no. Tyranny, Amaranth, cleanse them all." Then came the hypervelocity slugs. I had seen railguns fire before, from cruisers and heavy tanks, never from shoulder mount. Like blue fire, razor-sharp slugs of metal tore enemy warrior forms from their feet, tearing them apart into chunks of flesh. One volley, 5 knights, 24 dead warrior forms. From the smoke where they had vanished, they charged forth to melee, which seemed even more suicidal than giving the Xylax terms of surrender. I fully expected those hulking flesh minters to tear those 5 apart. It was then I understood what the word knight meant, why it was defined as a mounted warrior in armor, and a human devoted to a cause. Earth, their homework, is a death world, but we never saw anything particularly dangerous there. Sure, there were some impressive fauna and flora, and dangerous creatures that could kill with mere touch. But the reason it was a death world was the humans themselves. While not physically impressive, at least not more than our more fit races, they did have 2 dangerous gifts. One was their nearly limitless fountain of creativity and determination to keep moving forwards. They did not relent or retreat if they could achieve something. In that aspect, they seem impressive and even laudable. The second part in their psionic gift. I am sure most of you have heard the rumors humanity experimented on itself to achieve a sort of transcendence into the field of psionic. It is true, confirmed to me by their high-ranking officers, and an open truth among their people and society. They have wondrous abilities, like communication telepathically, increasing their own speed and physical might, and much more. They can apply anything to war, and their psionics are no different.
If you finish this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.